Motocross games are a great type of game. They are my very favorite type of racing game and some of my very favorite games to play in general. Some of my favorite games in all the years I've been gaming have been some motocross games. Maybe it's because I do it in real life so I can associate with the game better than some people, but they're awesome. We have simulation for a more difficult and realistic experience. We have arcade for people that don't want to take it maybe as serious. And then we have some simcade type of games that are kind of in the middle. A bit of simulation and a bit of arcade. So there's something for everybody depending on what you want. But what we're going to talk about today are 3 motocross games that took time to like, whether that's because the game was early access and needed updates and patches to get better, or maybe it was just really difficult and it took time to learn how to play it and get better at it. But that's what we're going to do today. These are in no particular order, but let's go jump into it and check out number 1. First up, we have MX Bikes. Now, this was probably the most obvious and easy game for me to choose to put on this list. The other 2 were pretty easy as well, but this one has the most reasons, in my opinion, why it took time to like this game. So hopefully I can communicate those in a good way, but we're going to start off with the first reason. The first reason is because it is early access. So when this game first came out, in my opinion, it was a good game. It was okay. It was an okay game, but it wasn't amazing. Now, I also came from playing console and arcade games, so to jump over to a simulation, it just felt different. But even after playing for a while in the early days, it was okay, but it just wasn't great. But many different updates and patches have came out to push this game into different betas, and for the most part, yeah, there have been a couple that the community was a bit split on, but for the most part, each beta is a bit better than the one before. The physics keep improving, and the overall game itself keeps improving. So that's the first reason why it took time to really start to like this game. The second reason is because it is a simulation game, so it takes time to learn how to play it, to get the button mappings on your controller where you want them, to find the bike setup you want, and even as simple as just in-game settings with the camera field of view. If you want to be a first-person or a third-person player, I mean, it just takes time because it is a simulation. The more the game is recognized and the more players that join the game and the better those players get, the more tips and tricks that are shared with the community to make the experience even better. And it just takes a bit of time to get all that stuff dialed in and how you want it to where you're playing the game at its most comfortable spot for you. So that's reason number 2. Reason number 3 is because in the beginning, obviously, just like with any game, especially with on PC, the modding community wasn't that big. The game wasn't as big as it is now, and it wasn't recognized by as many people as it is now. So the mods really make this game and give it almost unlimited replayability. The tracks keep getting better. The reshade program makes the game look even better. And the bikes, the gear, all that stuff, the mods have gotten better and there's so much content now. In the beginning, it was good, it was okay, but we didn't have all these tracks and all these different bikes and OEMs and stuff like that, the different gear packs and the bike sound mods and all the good stuff that the modding community has created for this game. So it took time for the game to get big enough for people to start recognizing it and really picking it up and enjoying it and trying it out and realizing that, hey, I want to start modding for this. So all of a sudden now, after time, we have tons of mods. So MX Bikes coming in at number 1 on this list. Number 2 would be MX GP3. Now, again, this list is in no particular order. I did feel like MX Bikes was probably the easiest and the most obvious one to put in this video because it had the most reasons why it took time to like that game. But MX GP3 was a little bit hard for me to put here because there were a handful of games I was deciding to be the third in this video, and this was one of them. But ultimately, I ended up settling on MX GP3. And you might be saying to yourself, that's kind of weird because I've said many times, and maybe you're one of those people that feel that way, MX GP3, in my opinion, my personal opinion, is the pinnacle of the MXGP series by Milestone. It is the best ever, and now that we know Milestone has dropped the license, it will be the king of the MXGP series in my opinion. So it's kind of weird to say it took time to like this game, but it really did the more I thought about it. The game before this, we got MXGP2, and that game was really good, but it was quite a bit different. The gameplay itself was slower, the game felt so much heavier, and the graphics were more crisp than they were in this game. This game feels very, very light. Sometimes it doesn't even really feel like the bike lands or hits the ground, or you're hitting a section of whoops or whatever. And the graphics can get a bit blurry at times, especially on console. So it was always a good game. It was definitely always a good game, but I just didn't know how good. And the more I played it, and the more time went by, and we saw different titles being added to the series, I really realized that this game was really good and the best in the series. We had great tracks, the gameplay physics were the best in the series, and it is considered to be kind of a simcade, but definitely leans more towards arcade. It isn't a difficult game to learn how to play, really. Maybe a bit more difficult than some MX vs. ATV games, but nowhere near as difficult to learn how to play as a game such as MX Bikes or MX Simulator. It is still very much a pick up and play type of game. But it did have the real tracks, it had great customization, it had the bikes, the manufacturers, the teams, the pro riders. I mean, it had all the bells and whistles to make it the official MXGP game, and the physics were, again, more arcade, especially with the push button whip where you lean the sticks together, pull them apart, but it was one of the better whips that we got in Milestone games, considering every game but MXGP1 had the push the sticks together, pull them apart whip. So even if the whip was still kind of canned, it probably, in my opinion, was one of the better whips in an MXGP series. Maybe not a Supercross series, but in an MXGP series, and we're just talking about MXGP at the moment. So yes, the game was great, the best in the series, and it took time. It really did. It just didn't. Coming from MXGP2 and then going to MXGP Pro and the games after, it felt different, and in a good way. So MXGP3 coming in at number 2 on this list. Okay, so I saved the best for last, okay? Here we go, right? Okay, warm the hands up. So I can already see people saying, this game sucks, this game's terrible, it doesn't matter, no matter how much time you played, it isn't going to get good, and whatever. That's completely fine. That is your opinion, totally fine. But this is my opinion. Supercross Encore released as Supercross the first time around, and then it came out as Supercross Encore. This isn't the exact same game. Supercross was okay, but one of my least favorite in the MX vs. ATV series, but then they came out with Encore, and it was better, but I didn't know how much I didn't realize the love I was going to have for this game when it first came out. But then I kept playing. I got to be friends with some of the best players in the world at the time, and I learned a bunch from them. There is a bunch of things you have to pay attention to in this game to have fun and go fast. You have to use the manual transmission, but you have to know how to use the manual transmission. It isn't realistic. You have to learn how to use it. You have to learn how to whip glitch and double preload and carry your speed in 5th gear around corners. It's super arcade. It isn't realistic whatsoever, but it's still fun. And the more I played, hitting these huge lines, jumping entire rhythm sections is super fun. And it isn't the easiest thing to do. Yes, it has clutch boost and preload, but to hit some of these big lines, I've seen some people say it's so easy, I just clutch boost and preload. The people that say that, unless you got really good at the game but still didn't like it, you will not be hitting some of these massive lines that some of these other players can hit that really do enjoy the game and really put in the time to get good at this game. Now, I'm not the best. I am not the best, but I'm not going to discredit the amount of time and effort that I put into this game to get pretty good. Above average for sure, because I put in the time. And the more I played, the more I enjoyed it. It came out with Supercross Encore, came out with better DLCs. They gave us the 2017 Supercross replicas that released the week before, which was super cool. I can't think of any game that has ever done that. So the longer the game was out, the better it got. Whether that was because we got better content or because I just learned how to play the game better. There was little tips and tricks that my friends would teach me or I would pick up on just from racing against them. I did a bunch of multiplayer racing in this game, and over time it did become my second favorite MX vs ATV game, only behind Reflex. And I know I'm in the minority with that, but it is true. I do feel like this game took quite a while to really realize that it was a fun game, a good game, even if it is purely arcade. There's no reason that they can't both exist, simulation and arcade. There is no reason that they can't both exist. You don't have to like it, but there's no reason they can't both be there. I've seen a lot of people try to knock this game because it's so slow and the preload is so stupid and it's just clutch boost, but I've seen some people that say that and they're terrible at the game. Okay, I'm not trying to be mean, but they're terrible. So I just don't think that's fair, and I think it's worth mentioning that this game does take a lot of time to really realize how fun it can be, if you're okay with playing in a very arcade type of game. So Supercross Encore rounds out number 3 on our list. Let me know in the comments how you guys feel about it, what your list would be. I'd be really curious to see, and we can go from there. But you guys and girls are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the support on the channel lately. It really does mean a lot. And until the next video, take it easy.